Your mind right now is probably running at least 7 different thought tracks simultaneously, replaying a conversation from yesterday, planning what you need to do later, judging how you feel about watching this video, noticing a physical sensation somewhere in your body, thinking about someone you need to text back, wondering if you are wasting time, and underneath all of that, a constant hum of background anxiety that you barely notice anymore because it has become your new normal. This is not how your brain is supposed to function. This is what happens when you never give your internal system a chance to process, consolidate, and clear the mental debris that accumulates hourly. Think of your mind like a computer with 40 browser tabs open, 12 programs running in the background, and updates waiting to install. Everything slows down. Nothing works efficiently. Eventually, the whole system crashes. But unlike computers, most people never restart their minds. They just keep adding more tabs, more programs, more demands on a system already operating at maximum capacity. This is why you feel mentally exhausted, even on days when you did not do anything particularly difficult. Here is what most wellness advice gets completely wrong about mental clarity. It focuses on adding more practices, more techniques, more things to your already overflowing schedule. Meditation apps, journaling prompts, breathwork exercises, gratitude lists. These tools can be valuable, but they miss the fundamental issue. Before you add anything new, you need to create space by removing what is cluttering your internal landscape. This is the principle of mental minimalism, and it operates on a completely different logic than conventional self-help approaches. Instead of asking, "What can I do to feel better?" you ask, "What can I stop doing that is making me feel worse?" This shift in question changes everything because it reveals that much of your mental chaos is self-inflicted through habits you never consciously chose to adopt. You inherited them from culture, absorbed them from environment, or developed them as coping mechanisms that once served a purpose but now just generate noise. The first micro practice is what I call strategic information fasting, and it works by deliberately starving your brain of external input for specific windows of time each day. Most people consume information continuously from the moment they wake up until they fall asleep. News, social media, podcasts, audiobooks, articles, videos, messages. Your brain never gets a break from processing external stimuli, which means it never has time to process internal experiences. You end up living entirely in reaction mode, responding to what is coming at you rather than connecting with what is happening inside you. Here is the practice. Choose 2 15-minute windows daily where you consume absolutely zero information. No reading, no listening, no watching, no scrolling. Just you and whatever thoughts or feelings arise in the absence of distraction. The first window should be within 30 minutes of waking up before your brain shifts into productivity mode. The second should be sometime in late afternoon or early evening. During that energy dip, most people try to fix with caffeine or snacks. During these windows, you can sit still, walk slowly, stare out a window, or simply exist without agenda. This is not meditation. You are not trying to empty your mind or achieve any particular state. You are just allowing your internal system to function without interference, the same way you let your body digest food without consciously directing the process. What happens during these information fasts is remarkable. Initially, you will feel restless, bored, or anxious. Your brain is addicted to stimulation, and withdrawal feels uncomfortable. But if you persist through that discomfort for 3 to 4 days, something shifts. Your thoughts begin to settle naturally. Insights surface that were buried under constant noise. You start noticing subtle feelings and body sensations that you normally override. Your creativity awakens because your brain finally has space to make unexpected connections between ideas. Most importantly, you remember what it feels like to be present with yourself, rather than constantly escaping into external content. This practice alone can reduce mental chaos by 30 to 40% within 2 weeks. Not because you are doing anything complicated, But because you are finally not doing something, it was creating the chaos in the first place. But here is the question that determines whether this practice actually changes your life. What happens when you discover what your mind actually sounds like without all the noise covering it up? When you strip away external noise and finally hear your internal landscape clearly, you often discover something unexpected. Much of the chaos is not random mental chatter, but unprocessed emotional data that has been accumulating for months or even years. Your mind keeps replaying certain conversations because there is unresolved emotion attached to them. Your anxiety spikes without apparent cause because your body is holding tension you never acknowledged. Your focus fragments constantly because part of your attention is always monitoring threats or problems you never fully addressed. This brings us to the second micro practice, emotional spot checking, a simple system for preventing internal buildup before it becomes overwhelming. Here is how it works. 3 times per day, set a gentle reminder on your phone, labeled simply, "How do I feel right now?" When the reminder goes off, stop whatever you are doing and take 90 seconds to scan your internal state without judgment or the need to change anything. Notice physical sensations first. Is there tension anywhere? Tightness? Heaviness? Warmth? Then notice emotional tones. Are you feeling calm, agitated, sad, content, frustrated, peaceful, anxious? Name what you find as specifically as possible. Not just bad, but disappointed and slightly resentful. Not just fine, but tired and quietly worried about tomorrow. The power in this practice is not the checking itself, but what it prevents. When you identify emotions as they arise, you create a small release valve that lets pressure dissipate before it builds to critical levels. Think of it like checking tire pressure regularly, instead of waiting until you have a blowout on the highway. Most people only pay attention to their emotional state when it becomes so intense that it disrupts their functioning. By then, you are in crisis management mode, which is far more difficult and time-consuming than simple maintenance. Emotional spot checking is maintenance. It takes 3 minutes total per day, but it saves you from hours of anxiety spirals, emotional outbursts, or that terrible heaviness that settles over you when too many unprocessed feelings pile up. Additionally, this practice builds emotional literacy, which is simply the ability to identify and name what you are feeling with accuracy. Most people have remarkably poor emotional vocabulary. They know happy, sad, angry, and not much else. But emotions exist in hundreds of specific shades, and the more precisely you can name them, the less overwhelming they feel. When you can say, "I feel disappointed that my friend canceled plans," and underneath that is some loneliness I have been ignoring, you have just transformed a vague bad feeling into specific information you can work with. The third micro practice addresses something that creates more mental chaos than almost anything else: the absence of clear boundaries between different domains of your life. Your work thoughts bleed into family time. Your relationship concerns intrude during work projects. Your financial worries contaminate moments that should be restful. Your mind becomes a chaotic mix of everything all at once, which makes it impossible to be fully present anywhere. The practice is called mental compartmentalization, but not in the unhealthy way the term is usually used. You are not suppressing or avoiding anything. You are simply designating specific times and spaces for specific types of thinking. Here is the implementation. Divide your mental activity into 4 categories: work and productivity, relationships and social connections, personal concerns and planning, rest and presence. Then assign each category to specific time blocks in your day. During work hours, you only think about work-related matters. If a relationship thought arises, you acknowledge it briefly and note it in a capture system to address later during your designated relationship thinking time. During family dinner, you only focus on connection and conversation. If a work problem surfaces, you note it for tomorrow without letting it hijack the present moment. This sounds simple, but it requires practice because your brain is habituated to thinking about everything all the time. The benefit is profound. When you know you have allocated time to address each domain of your life, your mind stops frantically trying to solve everything simultaneously. You can actually relax during rest periods because work concerns have their own time. You can focus during work because personal matters have their own space. This reduction in mental cross-contamination creates the experience of clarity that most people chase through countless other methods. But there is one more practice, perhaps the most counterintuitive one, that multiplies the effectiveness of everything else. Are you ready to discover why doing less thinking might be the key to thinking better? The fourth and final micro-practice is what I call productive mental idleness, and it directly contradicts everything modern culture teaches about optimizing every moment. You deliberately schedule time to do absolutely nothing productive with your mind. No problem solving, no planning, no analyzing, no improving. Just pure, unapologetic mental loitering. For most people, this feels almost impossible because you have been conditioned to believe that idle time is wasted time, that your value is measured by constant output and achievement. But neuroscience reveals something fascinating. Your brain does some of its most important work when you are not actively trying to accomplish anything. This is when memory consolidation happens, when creative connections form, when insights emerge, when emotional integration occurs. All the background processing that makes everything else function smoothly happens during what looks like downtime, but is actually essential maintenance time. Here's the practice. Schedule 20 minutes, 3 times per week, where you do something utterly pointless by productivity standards. Sit on your porch and watch clouds move. Lie on the floor and stare at the ceiling. Take a walk with no destination or purpose. Doodle random shapes on paper. Pet your cat for an extended period. The only rule is that the activity cannot have any goal, cannot produce any outcome, cannot be justified as useful in any way. This practice feels deeply uncomfortable at first because it activates all your conditioning about productivity and worth. Your mind will generate urgent thoughts about everything else you should be doing. You will feel guilty, restless, or like you are failing at life. Push through that resistance because what emerges on the other side is a quality of mental spaciousness that no amount of meditation or mindfulness practice can create. When you give your brain permission to truly rest without agenda, it stops running survival programs that generate constant low-level anxiety. You access a state of relaxed alertness where thoughts flow naturally rather than racing compulsively. Problems that seemed impossible to solve suddenly have obvious solutions because your mind was finally free to make connections it could not access while forcing productivity. Additionally, this practice directly counters the burnout epidemic that comes from treating your mind like a machine that should run continuously without rest. You would never expect your phone to function without charging. You would never run your car engine non-stop without maintenance. But you expect your brain to perform optimally while never giving it genuine recovery time. Productive mental idleness is that recovery time, and it pays dividends far beyond the 20 minutes you invest. Now let me show you what happens when you implement all 4 micro practices consistently for 30 days. Your baseline mental state shifts from chaotic and reactive to calm and responsive. You stop feeling like your mind is running you and start experiencing yourself as someone who has agency over their internal experience. Your sleep improves dramatically because your brain finally has time during the day to process everything, so it does not need to do it at night through anxiety dreams or insomnia. Your relationships deepen because you are actually present during conversations instead of mentally elsewhere. Your work quality increases because you can focus without constant internal interruption. And perhaps most valuably, you develop trust in yourself. You prove through repeated experience that you can create the internal conditions you need to thrive, which builds a foundation of confidence that external circumstances cannot shake. These practices are not complex. They require no special equipment, no expensive training, no hours of daily commitment. They demand only one thing: the willingness to prioritize your internal well-being over external productivity for small windows of time each day. Here is what I know for certain. After years of teaching these practices, the people who actually implement them transform their entire relationship with their own minds within weeks. The people who just intellectually understand them continue struggling with the same chaos indefinitely. Information without implementation is just entertainment. You now have the information. The only question is whether you will implement it or let it become another piece of content you consumed and forgot. You deserve a mind that feels like a refuge instead of a battlefield. You deserve to wake up without that immediate flood of overwhelm. You deserve moments of genuine peace that do not require escaping your own thoughts. These 4 micro practices offer you exactly that, but only if you actually do them. Start today. Start small. Start with just 1 practice for 1 week. Then add another. Within a month, you will barely recognize the quality of your internal experience because you will have finally addressed the root cause of mental chaos instead of just managing symptoms. If this resonates with you and you want ongoing support building these practices into your daily life, I invite you to become part of our community here. Subscribe not because I want numbers on a screen, but because transformation happens more easily when you are surrounded by people walking the same path. Every video we create focuses on simple, powerful practices that actually change how you experience life. No fluff, no theory for the sake of theory, just practical tools that work when you use them. I truly believe you can create the internal peace you are searching for, and I would be genuinely honored to support you on that journey. Click subscribe and let us build this together. Your future self will thank you for taking that step today.